Hello, I'm Adam Kielich, the managing attorney at the Kielich Law Firm in Bedford, Texas. Today's quick video is about who should not get an uncontested divorce. In a prior quick video, I talked a little bit about uncontested divorces and who should get them, and there's a couple longer videos here on YouTube that discuss uncontested divorce and how they work, and some other key issues in an uncontested divorce. Something that there's a little less information about is when an uncontested divorce is not right for the parties involved. So briefly, an uncontested divorce is nothing special under the Texas Family Code. It just means a divorce where the parties are reaching some sort of agreement on any property issues, any child issues involved in the divorce. There's no special process involved for an uncontested divorce, although some of the other processes typical for a contested divorce are going to be left out because they're just not necessary when the parties agree. An uncontested divorce is good when the case is simple, when there's a complete agreement between the parties, when they've got a good working relationship, especially with the kids. It often makes more sense to let the parties come to an agreement on their own or with the help of attorneys rather than trying to shove it through the court and make it a very aggressive, conflict-ridden process. But that said, an uncontested divorce is not good for everybody. So today we'll just talk about who and when those uncontested divorces are not a good idea or who they're not a good idea for. Probably the biggest reason why an uncontested divorce is a bad idea is when there's abuse involved in the relationship. And this can either be physical abuse or emotional abuse. And the problem here is that when there's a history of abuse or worse, ongoing abuse in the relationship, there's a high probability that the two parties did not come to an agreement on the issues in the divorce freely and with a good sense of information about the decisions they're making. There's a good chance that whoever the victim is in the abusive relationship does not have all of the information and agreed to the terms of the uncontested divorce because they were abused or to prevent further abuse. So they're usually not getting a fair deal, and it may ultimately be an arrangement where the terms do not provide safety for the parties or the children that are involved, and it may continue to expose the children or even the soon-to-be ex-spouse to continued abuse down the road. In these kind of cases, it's very important that the parties, especially the victim, has an attorney who's aware of the situation and is really watching out for this kind of behavior and ensuring that they're protecting their client's rights. So when I see a case where there's abuse or I suspect that there's abuse that I'm not being told about, I'm very hesitant to encourage people to have an uncontested divorce. Additionally, where there's complex child issues, it's often not a good idea to have an uncontested divorce. Sometimes where the child has special needs or there's a very complex arrangement between the parents involving the children, sometimes it works out really well because the parents know what the child needs or knows what's going to work to have a good co-parenting relationship after the divorce occurs. But where there's any kind of disagreement or the parties want something that is really unnecessarily complex, coming to that agreement and just rolling with what you have can often be risky because down the road those agreements will start to unravel as things change in lives, and next thing you know, the two parties have a poor co-parenting relationship and they're back in court trying to fix whatever sort of complexity was fed into the divorce in the first place. Similarly, I think when there's a very complex property situation, it's usually not a good idea to have an uncontested divorce, at least not without the parties doing a little bit of investigation to really understand what the assets are, what the debts are, and make sure that the value is known so that whatever agreement is reached is going to be fair to the two parties. It's very easy for one party or even both parties to not really understand the assets that are out there in the divorce, or to not really understand the value of those assets. And in that situation, once the ink dries on that divorce decree, once the judge signs it, it's pretty much done for the most part. If there's buyer's remorse down the road, there's really only so much the courts can do to open that divorce back up on appeal or with a motion for new trial and start that over. Often, though, where one party develops buyer's remorse, it's actually years down the road when they discover that a pension wasn't worth what they thought it was, or suddenly the credit card has more debt than what they thought, or the car's not worth what they were told it was, whatever the issue is, and suddenly the property division is no longer fair. So just like with the child issues, it's not to say that the parties could not reach an agreement on complex property issues, or that they must fight over them, but simply coming to an agreement and not doing the proper kinds of research and investigation on the assets may not be in the best interest really of both parties, or certainly of one or the other parties. And of course also, if no agreement can be reached, if the parties do not have a discussion about the issues and come to an agreement that both people believe they can live with, it can create a lot of problems down the road if they just say, hey, look, let's just split everything 50-50. We'll let the judge decide what to do with the kids, or we'll just do the standard possession order, and not really come to an agreement that deals with the issues. I think that's a bad idea for an uncontested divorce. It's a bad idea in every divorce, but I don't think it's a good idea for an uncontested divorce, because the parties are making an agreement that works. They're not considering their own needs or what's important to them. They're just trying to get done with the divorce, which is understandable, but can be very dangerous. You can end up in those situations where the property division really isn't 50-50 because the parties did not understand the true valuation of the assets or the debts that are out there. They may not have really thought about what's in the best interest of the children and just try to shove out of the divorce. There are certainly other situations where an uncontested divorce may not be a good idea, but those are really the ones that are the most glaringly obvious for when an uncontested divorce may not be the best idea. Of course, in any divorce or any family matter, the individual situation of a particular client is going to be most important, and decisions should be made with that particular individual's situation in mind.